You know that chilling prediction about water? The one that said,
The wars of the 21st century will be fought over water.
yeah, that one. Well, today we're going deep on something that's making that 1995 World Bank prediction feel all too real.
Hmm.
We're talking about China's new dam on the Brahmaputra River.
Right, the one that flows through China, India, and Bangladesh.
Yeah, and this thing is raising a lot of concerns.
Definitely.
We're looking at a video you sent us that really digs into all this,
Oh, good.
especially for folks wanting to understand Asia's future,
And how resource competition could play out.
globally even. So what we're going to do is try to figure out what's motivating China to build this thing,
Okay.
then untangle the potential fallout for India, Bangladesh, and the whole region.
Got it.
Most importantly, we'll see why this matters to you, even if you're thousands of miles away.
Right, because it does.
To grasp the magnitude of this all,
Yeah.
let's rewind a bit. India's first prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, once said dams are the temples of modern India.
Highlighting their importance in the country's development.
Yeah, it's interesting how that reflects a different era, right?
Absolutely. While India has relied on dams, China's approach is almost entirely focused on hydropower.
Even as the world's going solar and wind.
It seems so. It's like they're doubling down. They already control over half of the world's large dams. Just think about that. More than half.
Wow, and it's not just the number, it's the scale of these projects. You mentioned the Three Gorges Dam. That thing's so massive it actually changed the Earth's rotation.
Yeah, it's a powerful symbol of China's capabilities, but also how they handle resources.
And now they're planning an even bigger one.
On the Yarlung Tsangpo, right, which is the Brahmaputra before it enters India.
That's the one. 3 times the electricity of Three Gorges.
Makes you wonder, is this really all about clean energy? China's pledged net zero by 2060, and hydropower is key to that plan.
Right.
But it's hard to ignore the geopolitical stuff, too.
Exactly. It's one thing to build a giant dam inside your own country, but
Mm.
the Brahmaputra is not just China's river. It flows through India and Bangladesh. Millions rely on it.
So many people depend on that water.
It's like someone upstream controlling the faucet and deciding how much water everyone else gets.
Yeah, making India and Bangladesh pretty nervous.
Absolutely. And, China's already done something similar on the Mekong River.
Oh, yeah, those dams have been blamed for droughts in Southeast Asia.
So there's a fear that they could use this new dam on the Brahmaputra the same way.
To pressure or even control their neighbors.
Yeah, basically weaponizing it.
That's the big question, right? Could it be weaponized? Think of the leverage over India, especially with their history.
The source we're looking at is really worried.
Oh.
We say China could manipulate the flow, creating droughts or even floods.
It's a scary thought, but especially after that Kakhovka Dam thing in Ukraine, it's hard to dismiss.
Right. And while China says this is a run-of-the-river project, so minimal impact on downstream flow, well, let's just say there's a trust deficit.
Yeah, the source is pretty blunt about that.
They point out that China's made similar promises before, promises that haven't exactly panned out.
Right.
So what can India do about this? It feels like a tough spot.
The source suggests a water agreement where China shares data about what they're doing with the dam.
Real-time data, you mean?
Yeah, more transparency and communication could help build some trust.
That sounds reasonable, but will China actually agree? They kind of hold all the cards geographically and economically.
Yeah, that's the challenge for India, figuring out how to protect their interests when things are so unbalanced.
It's like, and forgive me for this analogy, but it's like China's playing chess, thinking 50 years ahead, while India's digging a 500-year-old pit hoping to find some votes. Pretty bleak picture for India's options, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that analogy might be a little harsh, but
Okay, but it does.
it does highlight the difficult spot they're in. It does underscore the complex reality, though. This source does offer some glimmers of hope, though.
Oh,
They say India should focus on building up their deterrent capabilities.
deterrent capabilities, like what?
Well, both militarily and economically. Making it clear there are consequences for messing with them.
So projecting strength.
Yeah.
Letting China know they won't be pushed around.
Exactly. But the question is, how do you actually DO that?
Right, what would that look like?
Well, on the military side, it could mean more troops along the border,
Uh-huh.
better ability to respond to threats, basically. But the economic side is where it gets interesting,
Okay, I'm listening.
because it gets kind of personal for all of us.
Personal, what do you mean?
Well, the source talks about how much India relies on stuff from China,
Oh yeah, like what?
especially manufacturing. They even mentioned Shane coming back to India.
Shane. The clothing company.
the one and only fast fashion giant back in the Indian market.
Wow, so this really hits close to home.
It does. It makes you think about economic leverage, you know?
Yeah, like can India really stand up to China if they're also welcoming back a company that undercuts local businesses?
That's the dilemma, isn't it? It's not just about politics and dams.
It's about real stuff we all use.
Exactly. Choices with real consequences for people, for their jobs, even for basic things like water.
You know what strikes me is this dam is just one piece of something much bigger.
How so?
We talked about China's obsession with dams, their history on the Mekong, now this economic angle with India.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's all part of a pattern, right? China being more and more assertive.
I think that's a fair assessment. It's about control, securing resources, projecting power. And this brings us back to a question we always ask.
Which is,
Why should someone listening to this in, say, Europe or North America care about a dam in Asia?
yeah, good point. It might seem far away, but why should they care?
Because it's a preview of things to come globally. I mean,
You're saying this is a microcosm of bigger trends.
absolutely. Climate change, resource scarcity, powerful countries throwing their weight around. This dam, this whole story shows us how those forces could play out.
So even if you're not in Asia, not directly affected, you should be paying attention.
Because it's a glimpse of the future for all of us. And it raises questions about how we manage resources, how we cooperate when things get scarce.
It makes that World Bank prediction even more real, right?
If water really does become the most valuable resource,
This isn't just about China and India.
it's about all of us and the future we're heading towards.
There's something else the source mentions about Tibet.
Tibet, where they're building the dam.
Yeah, they draw a parallel with what's happening there, what China's doing in Ladakh.
Ladakh, that border region.
Exactly. They say China's been really assertive there too, claiming territory, redrawing maps. It's like controlling the water is part of a bigger plan to dominate the region.
So it's not just about water or energy.
Maybe not. It's about land, about power. And it makes you think,
Yeah.
if China's playing this long game, thinking decades ahead, what are WE doing to get ready? Makes you think, huh. Like, well, some are just thinking about today. Others are already planning for a future most of us can't even imagine.
It is a sobering thought, isn't it? But that brings us back to the listener.
Right. Why should any of this matter if you're not living in Asia, if this dam doesn't directly impact you?
Because this story, it's like a warning, a preview of what's coming.
Of what?
A future where the things we take for granted, things like water, become scarce and valuable.
And then what happens?
Competition gets fierce. Countries start throwing their weight around, and the rules of the game, they change.
It's like we're moving from water being essential to,
Water being a weapon.
yeah, almost. It
It's-
could be used for leverage to start conflicts.
It's a possibility. And that's why we need to be asking ourselves some tough questions. If that World Bank prediction comes true,
If water becomes the resource of the century,
right, then what role will you play? Will you just sit back and watch, or will you try to shape things, make sure resources like water are managed fairly and sustainably?
it's a big question to think about. It reminds us that even though this is happening far away, it could affect us all.
We're all connected in ways we might not realize.
Well, we hope this deep dive has shed some light on all this. China's super dam, what it means for the region, what it means for the world.
It's a complex issue with a lot of moving parts.
And like always, we encourage you to keep learning, keep digging, keep asking questions, stay informed, and most importantly, talk about this stuff with each other. The choices we make now.
They will determine the future, our future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.
Stay curious.